So hi there, everyone. I'm Andrew Chitty. I'm hosting this webinar on behalf of the AHRC on the Immersive Experiences call, and thanks to everybody for joining. For those of you who tried to join on the 14th when we were doing a live event at the Catapult, we'd just like to extend our apologies again for what was basically a bit of a screw-up in terms of getting a stream to you. We know we've put the video from that event live. It was quite eccentrically filmed, quite interesting aesthetically. And you may have had a look at that, but there are other people who won't have been able to get anything from that. So I'm going to run through the call again and allow, we've got plenty of time for Q&A. And I'll also at the end be opening up a discussion on a new part of the Creative Economy Programme, which only went live yesterday, and putting in the direction of that, because I think it will be of interest to a lot of people, and it's very much part of the context for this, this Immersive Experiences call. So, I'm joined today by Sam Michel from Chinwag, who has set this up, and some of you will have interacted with a lot online. I'm going to encourage Sam, who's now muted his voice and his video, to give everybody a wave. It's a bit like one of those children's performers. There he is. Yeah, there's Sam. Hi.
Hi.
So Sam's going to try and wrangle the questions into some kind, some kind of order. What we'll be doing is we've got quite an extensive FAQ we've been assembling from the various events. So we'll be particularly interested in questions that we haven't had addressed before, but also going through some of the ones that we will. I'm also joined by Tom Trewhella from AHRC. Come on, give us a wave, Tom. Show you there.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, you have to bear with me. Someone's just knocking my door. I'll be back with you immediately.
Okay, so we just did a run through showing that saying we wouldn't do the South Korean businessman thing. So Sam is running the call from the AHRC's point of view, and we'll be able to. You'll be joining me for the Q&A, addressing particularly those technical questions a lot of you will have, which he knows far more about than I do, to be honest. So I'm going to start off with the presentation, and so I'll just, I will share some slides. And again, apologies if some of you have seen some or all of these before, but that's, I think it's important that we try and go through this for everyone now. Can I move these around the place so that yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is that was the welcome. That was the welcome. Welcome to everybody. And what I'll start with is a briefing on the call. So the context for all of this is quite important, and particularly now we're able to start talking about some other elements of what we're doing. So in the autumn, the government announced that they were intent on devising an industrial strategy for the UK, particularly in the context of, it has to be seen in the context of Brexit, and trying to identify those areas of the economy, those industrial sectors that required strategic intervention to help them fulfil their potential. Which was great, and the Green Paper came out in January, and it'll be followed in due course by a White Paper. They also, at the same time, devoted a considerable amount of money to a parallel effort called the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. So this was to identify areas of R&D that were particularly important for different sectors, and we started to see some of the announcements about that in the last few months. Now, the early announcements have been things like the emphasis on batteries, the Faraday challenge, decarbonising the economy requires lots of battery storage, and so there's a large effort been announced in new R&D for the automotive sector, particularly with batteries. We've seen announcements around autonomous vehicles and autonomous piloted vehicles in dangerous and hazardous environments, so oil and gas, but also all elements of the power generation chain. And we've seen announcements of funds going towards medical research, but particularly for new techniques, new processes to advance the development of new drugs. So pharma, engineering, automotive, they're all, so far, all of these announcements have been rather kind of engineering solutions to the economy in terms of traditional kinds of innovation. But so far, there hasn't been that much mention of the creative industries. Obviously, here it's this is the London 2012 opening ceremony done by Danny Boyle. There hasn't been that much which would consider the creative industries part of this industrial strategy or indeed this industrial strategy challenge fund. Now that's interesting, and it's just about to change. So just again to set context, over the last 15 years, in fact probably since 1997 when the idea of the creative industries was established in government policy making under Chris Smith, it's become more and more common to consider the creative industries an important sector of the economy. So these are the latest, probably, yes, well, about 6 months ago, a year ago, from the Creative Industries Council. So the size of the creative industries is recognised as an important economic sector. Its ability to grow, its ability to provide jobs, and its ability to grow faster than other sectors of the economy, particularly since 2008, is really recognised. And we now have, it's very rare to go into a government department or even a devolved administration and find people who won't say that the creative industries is very, very important. But whilst MPs may well say that and policymakers may say that about the economy, the case for the creative industries in terms of research funding is not as strongly made. And I found this coming into this role as creative economy champion for the research for the AHRC, this to be particularly striking. So the argument that the creative industries are important economically, one, the argument that research in the creative industries should be regarded in the same ways that it is for medical research or engineering or biotech, that isn't one at all. So this is illustrated by this statement from Greg Clark, now again the business minister after the election, that he said when taking this on, that he was very excited about furthering our world-class science base. So all research and development support for the creative industries comes under the science base. So what we as the HRC are trying to do is trying to argue with the other research councils that creative industries research and creative economy research also is vital in generating future value, but it's been rather neglected. So in some areas this has been more successful in the past. So in certain sectors of particularly the film industry, the graphic, GFX and special effects sector, which has grown very strongly in the UK over the last 10 years for a variety of reasons, there you've got a sector which is heavily influenced by technology and so has received recognition of the importance of investing in R&D. But there's been much less emphasis perhaps in the more traditional areas such as performance, and even less in areas such as craft, even though even quite small craft makers these days can have both global supply chains and global distribution networks. They aren't recognised very strongly in terms of R&D, and that to me is particularly striking, as the craft sector is now between 2 and 3 times as big as the recorded music industry. So it's a very important part of the economy. So what we're trying to do with our creative economy programme is to take a strategic approach to increasing the research and development effort in the creative sector, both creative industries and the wider creative economy. So we're trying to think about that. What do we mean? Well, in terms of creative research, one aspect is research about the creative economy. So that's fairly well at least understood. Whether there's enough of it is a question, but research about the dynamics of the sector. I'm just going to check on the questions just to see if there's anything everybody can hear. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I hadn't got that panel up. I'm going to do questions. Yeah, so if we can pile up questions at the end. So we've got research about the creative economy. It's easy to understand. The question is, are we doing the right kind of research about the creative economy to understand its dynamics how businesses thrive, how creative processes work, and so on. Right, I now need to that. Then we got research with the creative economy. So this is academic researchers and creative practitioners and creative businesses working together. So using co-design or collaborative methods to generate new research. And then perhaps the area that I'm most interested in, and perhaps which we have found the hardest to establish, is research for the creative economy. So this will be, if we imagine that medical research plays a very strong card into government, because medical research is assumed to naturally result in better healthcare outcomes. I leave whether that's the case aside, but it's a very powerful argument. What is the kind of research that delivers into the creative industries and the wider creative economy future value, social value, cultural value, but also economic value? So what is the equivalent of that kind of research? Research that drives the creative economy forward. So we're particularly interested in that. Now, when we first sat down and talked about this, Ed Hollis from Edinburgh School of Art, Director of Research there, reminded me that this was in fact a formulation very similar to that which Chris Frayling had come up with when he first went, before he was rector of the RCA, when he became a professor of research there, about the role of art and design. So there's research into art and design, which again is perhaps in that context fairly familiar, design history, art history. There's research through art and design, so using the techniques of art and design to deliver research, particularly important in design, of course. And but then there's research for art and design, the type of research that moves the discipline and the body of knowledge forward. And that's I think one that we're looking to encourage. So just as an illustration of some of the things that influence us, before I get onto this call, is the interesting research research that we're particularly interested in at the moment about the creative economy is around the idea that the creative industries cluster, and that within these clusters there are interactions which elevate both the excellence and the breadth of the kind of activity that goes on. So Nesta are particularly well known for having conducted this research over this. This is one of their earliest stabs where they identified, I think it was 9 creative clusters, and you'll all be from wherever you are trying to spot whether you're in one of them. Of course, now they've developed this research to identify around 40 creative clusters across the UK, where there are networks of business and academic institutions delivering value. So we're very, very interested in that, and I will talk a little more about that at the end, because it becomes important to our future strategy. The AHRC itself invested in 4 creative economy knowledge exchange hubs to explore ways of working between research and academia, so research with the creative industries, and those projects were supported for 4 years, which ended last year. So there's lots of evaluation on this, and they produced lots of new ways of working. But whilst they were great, they had some issues with scale. So the tendency was for these projects to be that there's co-working between researchers and practitioners or businesses. They tend to be quite small-scale projects, and we have to look to make those larger. But the question is, what is research for the creative economy? And that's what this call is the start of a process of trying to find out. So when we're talking about research for the creative economy, and particularly in this exciting area of immersive experiences, we need to move, if we're going to think about research that explores fundamental questions, we need to move beyond just dealing with technologies as they are expressed today. So whilst virtual reality headsets are fantastically interesting and interesting as research tools, as well as consumer devices, they're the current manifestation of the technology. But to address where immersive experiences move in the future, we need to move beyond those and perhaps explore other disciplines. So the most immersive, the touch point for me in all of this discussion of immersive experiences is always theatre. So theatre is an immersive experience that has been available to us for best part of 2,000 years. and has constantly evolved to develop new techniques. This is a punch-drunk show. So I think we need to move beyond solo experiences to explore what we mean by immersive experiences for audiences, larger audiences, and an interaction between audiences. And we also need to think about how immersive experiences, be they virtual or augmented or mixed reality experiences, how they change how we interact with culture, with objects, and so on. So, oh, slight pause. This is a picture. It always amuses me because it's no longer there. One of the other touch points for me is archaeology. So how can we explore very long-scale cultural memory through immersive experiences? And this is how the reception area at the Arts and Humanities Research Council looked until relatively recently, where you sat in the middle of Stonehenge, which is, of course, something we'd all like to do. So that brings me to the call. What we've tried to do is to identify 3 themes that are rooted right in the heart of the arts and humanities. So 3 big themes which act as clustering points for the exploration of new immersive experiences. Because what we're doing with this call is we're really offering funding for people to think quite big thoughts, and as I'll come to talk about later on, to essentially conceive of big propositions that could ask fundamental questions that would then be suitable for bigger funding. So the 3 themes we've chosen are memory, place, and performance. And what I'll do now is give you a very personal kind of perspective about the things that excite me about those kind of themes, but they may not be the things that excite you about them. We're looking for a diversity here. So this isn't a question of shoehorning proposals into our definition of memory, place, and performance. It's just these are clustering points. We'd like to know how the things that you conceive of will address these themes. So memory, for me, one of the most exciting and key areas here is memory-based institutions. So since I suppose the 18th century, the model of a memory-based institution has been a collections model. We collect things from all around the world and put them in a single building, and then they're interpreted or used as a basis for knowledge on the basis of those physical collections. So for me, one of the interesting things here is how can immersive experiences change our experience of and an interaction with collections-based institutions and objects and artifacts. How can they explode that idea of the museum? So we no longer bring things together in a physical place, but in a virtual place. How can we augment or change the interpretive experience within a memory-based institution and a collection? But as I say, this is an area that where there is a body of work ongoing, but perhaps this is the opportunity to conceive of some transformational projects that deal with memory. Now, my take on memory, as I say, is that's just my take on memory, that it's memory-based institutions, museums, galleries, archives. Equally valid would be an interpretation which thought about, personal or emotional memory, and there's again some very, very interesting work going on with immersive experiences and their interaction with health, with cognitive deficit and dementia and so on. So memory, the organizing of cultural or personal memory through these technologies is the key here, and the idea of creating experiences. It doesn't have to be defined restricted to archives or libraries, but they're perhaps one very interesting area. So that's my take on that. So place, yeah, again, another really exciting area, opportunity here, I think, is the ability to combine geography, to combine location with data, and to tell new stories in places. So you'll probably notice that as I talk, that I think one of the underlying themes that span these memory, place, and performance ideas is narrative. So again, an interesting thing is how can we create new experiences that allow us to combine data with our experience of a place. And by place, we might mean a single building. We might mean a locality. This Museum of London Street Museum project, which allowed you to geolocate historical photographs in their current locations to create a kind of augmented reality experience of the city. It's kind of a prototype experience in many ways, but experiencing locality and telling stories, different stories or different services, different experiences created around a locality. So building a locality, or maybe a whole geography, a whole area. So again, this is the Bannockburn Interpretation Centre in Scotland. Lots of it contributed by Glasgow School of Arts, School of Simulation. So how can we tell stories across an entire landscape, enabled by our ability to combine data and experience? So for me, I think, you know, this moves us into an area that's probably more augmented reality than virtual reality. But again, that's only my take. I think this is a very exciting area for the digital humanities and also for the environmental humanities. The third theme, in many ways, it seems more straightforward. So what new immersive experiences can we create around performance? And I think there's an interesting thing here in terms of the role of the technologies. So these slides are from the AHRC's Tempest, which is still running in London, which used a live motion capture and projected character for aerial. So there's obviously some of these technologies enable new techniques of performance. I think that they also necessarily enable us to explore new ways of being an audience as well. So the consumption of performance as well as the production of performance. So process to create performances and experiences that can be absorbed in different ways by audiences. And here again, I think there's an awful lot of practice that we can draw on from immersive and ambulatory theatre, which hasn't necessarily used technology, but has used ways of delivering performances across time and place that may make them amenable to these kind of techniques. And if it were me, I also think that the exploration of things like escape rooms are also an interesting set of techniques for developing narratives that can become immersive. So lots of opportunity there. So that's our three themes: memory, place, and performance. I hope that I've got across the idea that we aren't defining these themes. If you ask me in the Q&A to define them, and you say, what do you mean by performance? I'll probably say, what do you mean by performance? We are anxious to be open-ended. We do want the themes addressing. We think they're exciting themes that bring multiple disciplines to bear, but we do want these concepts that we're wanting to support here to come from you and cluster around these themes rather than slot in to something we've pre-decided. So I'm just going to twiddle my screen a little bit so I can read what's on the slides. So the core, we've got these three themes. We do expect you to address them. Just for the avoidance of doubt, if people say, but do you have to address one or more of them? It's entirely up to you. Some people would say that memory and place are intimately associated. Other people would say that in certain projects, place and performance are intimately associated. I agree with them. Some people will say all three. All we want you to do is lay out an argument on which of these themes or combination that you're addressing. So that's the themes. The scope. So what are we trying to do here? So what we're trying to encourage is this is the first stage in what we anticipate will be a multi-stage strategy. So what we're trying to do here is encourage you to build multidisciplinary research partnerships. Now, it seems to us you need multidisciplinary partnerships to address these larger scale ambitious projects around creating immersive experiences. So you need the arts and humanities. They're at the core. So whether it's performance, whether it's design, whether it's history, there is a core knowledge set around the arts and humanities. You may also want to draw in the social scientists of various kinds, economists, psychologists of various kinds, people who sit in areas of investigating human-computer interactions. We want you to, or we really do want you to, actually, I was going to say encourage, but we want you to draw in businesses. To me, as someone who practiced within businesses on the web in the mid-90s, this feels a little the same, in that it isn't entirely clear that knowledge and expertise sits in just one place. Businesses that are trying to deal with the practical experience of building immersive experiences have some knowledge which researchers could benefit from, and vice versa. And we do want you to stay close to businesses. But what we mean by businesses is quite wide. It includes cultural organisations, it includes creative practitioners, and includes not-for-profits. And we also think that within these research partnerships, you will need to necessarily draw on the expertise of the STEM subjects. So the development of the technology, what's currently possible, what research questions might be set. We do think you'll need interaction with computer science, software, sensors, machine learning, and those areas. Touching on that, it's important to say that the reason that this is not a technology call, and the calls that come after it, we hope will not be primarily technology calls either. We believe that it's only by creating experiences and new experiences that you can define the objectives of the technology. You can set challenges for the technology to solve, and in the creative industries, it's the creative experience that pulls through technology. We're trying to get away from that model of invest in the technology and then the creative industry's job is to work out what it's for. We don't think that's right. Okay, so that's the scope. And the objective. So this is really clear. This call is funding thinking time. So, and why is that? Because we want you to develop partnerships that can address large-scale propositions. We intend there to be follow-on funding for those large-scale propositions. We had the choice of waiting to start this program until we'd got that sorted out. We're a long way down the line in terms of what those funding for large-scale propositions will be. But if we wait until we have the large-scale funding, then we won't be able to go through this stage of encouraging and supporting people to get to know each other. Because that's a real issue, I think, in all multidisciplinary projects, is that people ask for multidisciplinary programs, but nobody supports people getting to understand each other's disciplines first. So we would encourage you to coalesce around an idea and just get to know each other, to map out what might become a large-scale proposition. By the end of the process, we will have the funding in place, whether purely Research Council funding, whether Innovate UK and Research Council funding, or whether possibly the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund funding to fund those propositions. We would like you to prototype, but prototype, again, we don't have any nailed on definition of. So for some partnerships, prototyping may be doing sketches, it may be developing concepts, it may be even working some things through with some trial users. For other partnerships who perhaps have a design bent or have an industrial partner, it may be building a kind of demonstrator or illustrator. What we want you to be able to do is to be able to illustrate the proposition so that you could talk about it, and that becomes relevant in a moment. But the real outcome of these projects is to develop a roadmap for future funding. So a proposition, a proposal. So my background is in the digital media business, and effectively this is development funding. And I hope that people will see this as very helpful, because in some ways, development funding is always the hardest but the most valuable type of funding to get. It's funding to get together to develop an idea rather to a stage where you can pitch it. So the scale of the funding. We have £2 million. It's very slightly less than that, but that's not really, it's a rounding error. But we have £2 million, and that's equally contributed from the Arts and Humanities Research Council and the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. So the two councils working together. That doesn't mean that EPSRC wants to fund technology, we want to fund humanities research. What it means is that we've come together behind this idea of supporting development of ideas that span the area. We've got up to 75k per partnership. Now, we know that's not a huge amount of money, but as I say, this is funding thinking time, understanding and concept development time. So we don't anticipate that it'll be funding making things, say prototyping maybe, sketching, illustrating. We imagine that we don't want to string this out for ages, but these are quite short, focused projects. So 6 to 9 months you can choose to develop the concept. And to get the funding, we have, and Tom can talk about this later, we might try to make this a streamlined process. So yes, there will be paperwork with some alterations to it, but the objective is to pitch to an expert panel of peers. So a 15-minute pitch, maybe 10 minutes Q&A, or 10 minutes pitch, 10 minutes Q&A. So a short pitch where you pitch your idea. So these, we want you to be able to say what it is you want to explore, who you want to explore it with, and where you think you might get to. And that's about it. So the requirements. So these are pretty strict. Because this is all Research Council money, the lead partner must be an academic lead. And by that we mean either within a higher education institution or an independent research organisation. So a research organisation or academic lead. All proposals must have a business partner within them, because we want from the very start this interchange between practice and research to be embedded. You must address the core themes. I hope I've got across the idea that these themes are ideas, they're clustering points, they're not boxes. And I'm sure it's not beyond the wit of most people on this webinar or have attended a very well attended events to argue very strongly that anything they want to do will address one of those themes. The only thing you should concentrate on is not whether you've got the right answer, but whether you can convince that expert panel that you've done that seriously and made it interesting. And the final requirement, I mentioned before that we want you to be able to talk about these ideas, is applying and being granted, receiving one of these grants means that you must commit to a showcase. So in the late spring or early summer next year, we will have an event where we bring all the projects together, and everybody must commit to attend that event and talk about it, because we want to develop a cohort of ideas here, where there's communication between the ideas. So what stage some people will be, some projects will be in flight, some projects will be completed, some projects will not. But we want you to be able to talk about it, illustrate your ideas, illustrate the challenges, and hopefully elsewhere within the cohort may come some ideas for solving those. So that's it. That's the call. 3 themes, some requirements, funding thinking time, thinking big ideas. We want people to be quite out there. We don't want people to look just to things that they can execute within the next 18 months, but looking further into the future. We want people to be ambitious. We want people to bring multidisciplinary partnerships. We are producing a delegate list for all the events and for this webinar that's publicly accessible, so that people can inquire of other people who are already interested to draw their partnerships together. So hopefully you'll have all added your details and opted in when registering. You can go and change that if you want to add more details at the end of this. You know, we think we're going to get some very, very exciting large-scale propositions here. So I'd now like to suggest that Tom Trewhella from AHRC joins me. And hopefully Sam has marshalled all of your questions into some kind of orderly queue. And perhaps, Sam, it might be easiest if you introduce the questions and then Tom and I answer. And what I'll do is I'll kill the slides and then bring them back to talk about the clusters program a little bit when we close.
Okay, well, we've got a few questions already that have come in. No doubt more will be added. So we can probably go in order, actually. There doesn't seem to be much overlap. There's a couple around place. So Kirk's asking, the call focusing on place mentions UK places. Do successful projects have to work with UK locations? And there's another question asking about international collaborations. So somebody would like to involve a Japanese business partner and an American academic partner. So maybe we could talk about the international side of things, both for the project itself and for the partnerships too.
Okay, Tom, do you want to take the question about international partners and I'll talk about international places?
Sure. Okay. So, hello, everybody. International partners. So, international co-investigators based at international research organizations are fine within this call. International non-academic partners are fine. The question we are still pursuing internally, so as you'll see from the call, it's a bit unique in that non-academic partners of certain sizes can draw money from the grant. What we're not sure yet is whether non-academic partners based outside the UK can draw money from the grant. So they can be your partner. The question will be whether or not they can draw money from the grant. So as Sam's alluded to, we're actually drawing an FAQ together, which covers lots of questions that have come up at all these events. This is one that's come up at every single event and will be amongst the very early questions to be answered in that FAQ. So you can definitely have an international non-academic partner. The question will be whether or not they can receive money from the grant, and we will hopefully have that answer within the next few weeks.
Okay, so perhaps I can pick up on the international places. So I think this is a really, really interesting one. So the first thing to say is there's absolutely no compulsion to use UK only locations. I think whether it's individual buildings or localities or landscapes, I think the ability to create immersive experience, I think the importance or the iconography or the challenges, the research questions around the geographies are the important things. But I'd also say I think it would be fantastic if we had some projects that addressed international landscapes or ex-UK buildings, because I think this is a global opportunity. And I think it's really important that UK researchers and UK businesses demonstrate to policymakers that this is something that is not just about interpreting the UK, but is about interpreting the world.
Cool. So we have some more questions about the makeup of the partnerships. Charlotte's asking, can we have more than one partner? Can you apply with more than one partnership and more than one proposal? And somebody else asking about multiple proposals as well.
Do you want me to take that? Yeah. Okay. So you should build these partnerships as you see fit. You can certainly have more than one partner. That's not a problem at all. You should add as many partners as you think you need to address the proposition you put together. Think about the panel. Think about what makes persuasive case, what's persuasive team. You know, there's no magic number. It very much depends on what project you put together, but you can certainly have more than one partner. In terms of putting in more than one proposal, from a research organization point of view, that's fine. You can put in as many as you like. Things to think about is we won't pay for more than one FTE of someone's time, so make sure you're not committed. And that's across any active research council grant or any other paid funding. So just make sure you're not breaching that. If you're a non-academic partner, you can definitely be on not lots of applications. That's fine. And also, but on a non-rule sort of practicality point, you might want to talk to all your potential partners to make sure that they are clear that you are attached to lots of potential applications. And if multiples of those are funding that you can do what you're committing to do. So that's not within the rules of the call, but is one you should probably be thinking about and talking to your potential partners about.
Yeah, I think as as Tom says, one of the questions you've got to ask yourself there is, how does it look to that panel? So I can imagine that people with certain specific enabling or technical specialisms, it would be, or businesses indeed, be quite natural that they would join a number of partnerships to provide a particular function within it. I think that we do want, what we're trying to encourage is really big propositions that we can then, that would then be suitable for larger scale funding, hundreds of thousands and perhaps beyond, either from research and R&D, public research type support, or from a combination of that and potentially commercial investors as well. So I think the question you've got to ask yourself is, when you're writing that compelling case for this is the most important thing, and this is a really compelling, exciting idea, and here's another one. That's the kind of question. But there's no bad. It's a question for you, what role you play, and how you think it best serves your interests.
Cool. So we've got some questions around, I guess from academics or recent academics about their involvement. So just to summarize some of them, we've had Ahab asking, if can early career researchers lead projects, having no previous experience of leading funded projects, but supported by an experienced researcher? And do you have to be in a permanent academic post to be one of the primary investigators? And
So
also sorry, go ahead, Tom.
I can deal with those both quite quickly. So in terms of both early careers researcher, yes, you can be, but there are specific eligibility requirements you need to fulfill for an AHRC award. So that's within the call document itself, or actually I think it might be within the document referencing the call document. But the answer is yes, but you need to fill certain other criteria. My advice would be have a look at that call document, and if you don't feel like you're clear about whether you fall into that category, drop me an email. In terms of permanent academic post, it'll be standard Research Council rules. So that means you either need to have a contract that will cover the whole lifetime of the grant, or be in a position to have a contract or a contract-like agreement in place if the grant is successful for the whole duration of the grant. So these are standard Research Council eligibility criteria. If you are not sure whether or not you fall in them, I think Sam will be posting my email at the end of this. But yeah, drop me an email and I will be able to confirm your specific circumstance.
Cool. As a follow-up, Luigi's asked, should the academic lead be part of an institution, or could they be a recent PhD with a business partner?
So the academic lead should be based at a research organisation or an independent research organisation.
Yeah, it's perhaps just worth reflecting on that. So just to be clear, for this competition, because of the funders being 2 research councils only, we can't at this stage have projects that are led by business partners. That doesn't mean that we don't think that's a good idea, because we do think it's a good idea. And certainly for any follow-on funding, we would want to have in place the opportunity for it to be either business-led or research organisation-led. But we haven't managed to achieve that at this stage. So those are both a limit to the amount of funding. The research councils within this grant can go to business. It's 20%, which is 20% more than the standard research council rate of 0. But it is a limitation at this stage, and there's a degree of regret on our side that for this competition we can only have research organisation led projects. But we think that the real fund, large scale funding, that certainly can't be the case. So we'll fix it. I'm afraid we're going to have to fix it later.
So we've got on the subject of partners, we've actually had a few people ask about. We've been tripped up on this one before about the bullet point saying business partner, asking whether that could be a not-for-profit or an association, an organisation associated with a university, for example.
Do you want to take that one? So within the call document itself, it doesn't talk about business. It talks about non-academic partner. So that's wide enough to encompass business, not-for-profits, registered charities. Just a non-academic partner is fine for us.
Cool. Should we talk money? It always comes down to this. We have a few questions on budget, unsurprisingly. So somebody asking, they have Erhan is asking, he's got a potentially revolutionary idea to address one or two of the core themes, but cannot make sure for how much of the technical budget how much they're going to be able to achieve with the budget that's given. Are there any specific expectations from the showcase about what percentage of the technical challenge should be addressed? And somebody else is asking about the date for the showcase, whether that's been confirmed.
Shall I take those, Tom? Because they're actually. So I think to take them, I think there's three questions there. So revolutionary idea. Not sure how much it can be used for technology. So I guess our expectation here is that grants at this kind of level can't support wide-scale technology development. Do tell us otherwise if that isn't the case. But the expectation is that there won't be, out of this 75k, that is not the kind of scale that you can do large-scale technology development on at all. So if you've got a radical and revolutionary idea that can do, explain it to us and use this opportunity to spend 6 months working that out, and when it comes to the showcase, illustrating it to the degree that you can. So again, there's no expectation of devoting a specific proportion of the 75k to illustrating this in the showcase. It's a matter of, I think, identifying whether you think that to convince a future large-scale funding program of what this is what would you need to do to bring it alive, to illustrate it. It may be that in some cases that's addressing a particular issue that you then want to focus on prototyping, maybe a bit of user experience or a bit of world building or something. But that could be done through, if you have a partner who can use a game engine and do something sensible with it within those limitations to illustrate it, fabulous. If you think that that's best done given your partnership by illustration, or even by bringing along a small theatre group, which has been suggested at one of the other events that we did, then find the appropriate way of doing it to bring the idea alive. I think also it's worth saying that we don't necessarily expect you to have all your partners together by the time you start this. You could be using this exercise to say, we are a group of researchers across this, or we're looking at addressing the theme of location, and we have, I know, a heritage institution or somebody who owns a building on site, but we don't have X, and we're going to use this 6 months to find what we need. Did that cover all three of those? I think maybe it did.
I think so. I think the last one was, do we have a date for the showcase? I think that's May, isn't it?
Okay. So no, we don't. We've been talking with a number of parties. It started off with one party, and as we've gone around the country, that several others have thrown their hats in the ring about doing a showcase to align with another immersive event. So it could be like the showcase could be like a research strand to a larger event. So we're aiming at a date in late May or early June, because that's where we think it would fit best within the flow of the competition, and there are a couple of opportunities. But where and when, no, we haven't confirmed.
Cool. Got questions piling in. There's more budget stuff. So we've got a question about, in the proposal, does a specific amount of money need to be attributed for each activity? Or or is there a need to give details on how that money would be spent?
Yes. I mean, the thing to do would be to have a look at, if you haven't already had a look at the full document, have a look at that. The actual application form itself should be live by the start of September. There is a requirement for you to detail what you're going to spend the money on, and also to talk about that in a bit more of a narrative way within the justification resources. You need to be able to persuade the assessing panel that what you're requesting for is, it's reasonable for what the work you're expecting to do. You need to show them why you need that much and not double that and not half that. So yes, detail is certainly required.
A couple more follow-up budget ones. We've got Charlotte asking if the project has a number of partners, presumably industry partners, do they all need to come out of the 15% allocation, or could or could it be split between them? And also, should the budget be focused mostly on researchers' salaries or on equipment or travel?
So I can take those as well. In terms of what the budget should be focused on, you should decide what it should be best focused on to deliver what you are saying you're going to deliver. That's all the advice we can give you within that. In terms of the number of partners, the amount of that 75k FEC that can flow to non-academic partners is 20% total. So if you've got one partner, they can take up to 20%. If you've got 10 partners, they'll have to share that 20%. It's not per partner, I'm afraid.
I think it's worth also maybe thinking about so I've in the past been in these kind of collaborative R&D projects as an industry partner, and I think it's worth thinking about what the motivation of an industry partner is for such an early stage project. And so it could be the opportunity of building something down the line. It could be about gaining research insight to address really key questions. The payoff for the business partner may come further down the line. So don't just think about it as, is there enough money to get my non-academic partner to build me something? It's really important that you're bringing partners in who themselves have questions to kind of answer. And there's also thinking about it, though the proportion of funding that can go to the non-academic partner is limited, at least there is some. So again, if you're paying for time, people's time, at least you can pay for some of their time, which is, from my experience, is a kind of welcome change. But think about also how whether that's the incentive or whether the ability to develop something that may have IP value in the future is really the major thing. But again, it's all about trying to build the relationships and build the partnership and exchange, achieve an understanding of each other's practice at this stage, rather than is there enough money to build something? Because there isn't.
So moving on from the budget side of things, we've got a question about a novelty. So people asking whether there's a preference for building on previously funded ideas or developing something entirely new. Do projects have to develop new immersive technologies, or can they explore new collaborative immersive experiences using existing tech? So let's quickly scrolling down. Can you submit a project idea that you've already started developing on a small scale but wish to expand?
So I think, again, top line on those is, and I hope people get the impression here that we're trying to draw this as widely as possible. Again, I think just a few kind of steers from where we're coming from, but these may not be in the end, it's an expert panel you've got to convince. So from where we're coming from, experiences are the important thing. So it's the novelty of the experience in terms of addressing the themes. So does it bring multidisciplinary skills to bear in addressing one of those themes? At this stage, you might well want to use existing technology because this isn't a technology development program. To explore those things, the experiences should be new and sophisticated and advanced, and perhaps ask other research questions. You may, in fact, some of those research questions may well demand new technology or new technology development in the future, and that will be part of the subsequent project. So we've got no rules. I think it's always a difficult one about previously funded projects because what one wants to do is a kind of combination of reinforcing success and encourage new developments and new angles. So I think having sat on panels, all I can offer, and perhaps Tom can offer a perspective here, is that when one sometimes sees an application which is basically just looking to extend a project that's or carry on doing what a project has already been doing, then sometimes that can fail to convince. Whereas if it's a project that has got to a certain point and now says, oh, this vista has opened out in front of us, which is new and exciting, then that's perhaps more convincing. Tom, do you want to?
No, I think you've hit it there. I think you need to think about it from a panel's point of view. I think if you're asking for a continuation of what's gone before, then I guess think about how a panel would feel about that. You know, you could very easily reframe it as to why this continuation is important. What is new about this continuation? You know, that, so maybe talk about what's new about the new about the proposal, rather than that it's just a continuation. You know, this is an opportunity, as Andrew said, doesn't look like a usual research council application process. So I think we'd encourage you to take advantage of that. Think of this as an opportunity that is not the same as a standard research grant application or a standard research networking application, and treat it similarly. You know, this is a real opportunity for you to focus on building a partnership and to do something new, either to grow an existing partnership in a new direction or to build a new partnership, and think about that, I would say.
So I've got to follow up kind of on that partnership angle. Somebody asking how formed those partnerships need to be. Do they need to be, and do they have to have the potential to be big? And a question from somebody asking, they're working with the Arts Council England and an Arts Council England grant with a university partner, but if they're successful with this grant, they can take the research to another level. Is that an issue?
It's on the latter one. I don't think it's an issue as long if it does take the research to another level. The former questions, does the partnership have to have the ability to be big? I think the question for us is, does the project that might result have the ability to address big issues? So I think there is I think there's no bones about it. What we're trying to encourage is a kind of level of ambition here, which we anticipate that coming out of the industrial strategy will be, the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund will be a large-scale funding stream for immersive experiences and technology. It's been identified very strongly across the creative industries and beyond that immersive experiences and technology are a big opportunity for the UK. So we expect it to be, large-scale support for that to evolve over the next 12 to 18 months. So we do want to encourage some partnerships that have big ambitions, that could make iconic projects. But obviously, it's small and perfectly formed is also a good thing.
Cool. So we've got some other questions about the balance between humanities. So somebody's asking, would it be preferable for the humanities partner to be the principal investigator or for the social science partner to be the principal investigator?
So I can take that one. We're interested about where your research or the research questions you're proposing to answer reside, not what department you're in or what your background is. I think it's useful to think about who's committing funding to this call. So obviously you need to make sure that across your proposition you have enough to interest the AHRC and EPSRC, but I don't have specific guidance that says it can't be led by a social scientist if the work they were doing sat across the relevant academic fields. That's not an issue.
Cool. And this, three people have asked this procedural one. Does the non-academic partner need to be registered, incorporated, or could it be an individual?
It can be an individual.
Great. And somebody's asking, do you need both a researcher who would come under EP, SRC, and AHRC in the bid?
No, you need to make sure the partnership covers it. So that might be to the researchers, that might be to the non-academic partners. You think about the bids holistically rather than you need to have one from column A, one from column B, one from column C.
Great, thanks. There's a couple of corking questions here. So somebody's asking, what's the best way to attract an academic if there aren't any on the spreadsheet that we've shared? They've tried in the past regarding funding projects and they've always said they're too busy.
Oh, that's an excellent question. I'll give you some sort of general procedural insights, and maybe I'll hand over to Andrew. So obviously we've got this big Google document list that Sam's been pulling together, which has the details everyone said they're interested in this call. I think if you're not having a lot of luck with that, other things I might suggest, if you look on Gateway to Research, which is where the research councils publish all their successful application, so data from all their successful applications, you can just do a bit of a text search to see who is a current active researcher within the fields you're interested in, and drop them a line and see if they're interested. If you get no joy through that, you might think about going to the university centrally. Often they've got business development teams or partnership development teams, so you could see if you can talk to them and see if they know of academics. But there's no magic bullets, I'm afraid, unless, Andrew, you have a particular insight.
I certainly don't think there's a magic bullet on this one. I think that it's very interesting. I mean, we've had from the list of and the kind of context list around this call that we've got a lot of academics in a lot of different fields. So I think if you have an idea of the kind of academic research, you know, the subject specialism, the insight, the methods or approaches that you need, then first place would be the big spreadsheet we're putting up, because I think there's a lot of real excellence within there. If not, if you've really got, and if you have got a very tight idea, I would be very interested to know that. So feel free to contact me about it, because it would be fascinating to find out that there's an academic discipline that's needed for these kind of things that we can't find. I'd be surprised. It may be about connecting people, but please do contact me on the either at CE program or via the. I think my contact details are up on the CE program's website. But yeah, get in touch if it's a real problem.
Your contact details aren't there yet, but they can be.
They can be, yes.
We have got, careful what you wish for. We've got a couple of people, 3 people asking about impact. So do they need to show the potential impact? Does it need to be societal, technological, or cultural and artistic? And what are the... Sorry,
we haven't had that specific question, and I think Tom can speak to it very eloquently in how that he's made that a lightweight aspect of the proposal at this stage.
Yes. So, given that this is a different kind of proposition to a sort of standard Research Council grant, we would like you to talk about your impact, but also we recognise that this is very much earlier in the sort of the research process, as it were. So those may be potentials or hopefuls, and maybe a lot more. It may be very different to a sort of standard impact discussion that you're used to putting through an application. Again, it should be covered in the call document what we're after. It is something different, and we do recognise that this is something that is earlier. But you know, you're going to be building a partnership that will hopefully last beyond the lifetime of this funding, and is potentially going to do hugely exciting things. You can talk about that as an impact, and you can talk about the impact of things you hope to develop. So I guess what I'm saying is we do still want you to talk about it, but the sort of requirements and the sort of expectations are not the same.
Great. A couple of quick ones for you. Does this apply to the Isle of Man?
So I think I've dealt with that one via text in the answer column.
Cool.
But that's fine. I can restate it for everyone else. The answer is we're not definitely sure yet. That's something that's being covered in the FAQ. It did get raised at one of the earlier discussions we have. I'm still trying to find an answer. It's one of those ones that is surprisingly difficult to find a sort of definitive internal answer, but will definitely be covered in the FAQ.
Brilliant. And a favourite that, another one we've got, hopefully a quickie, is journalism a topic compatible with memory and place?
So I think that's a very interesting one. Obviously, there has been a real, maybe explosion is an inappropriate word, but there's been a real interest in using particularly virtual reality, although often in the form of 360 video, in journalism to extend the engagement of the audience. And you see that in projects, particularly in war zones in Syria and development contexts. So I think in that sense, yes. I'm sure there's journalism that can be applied as a discipline to both memory and place in a really, really interesting way. So yeah, great, go for it.
Cool, thank you. And this is the thorny one. Where does any IP generated reside?
Shall I have a crack at that one? So unlike, say, with other forms of grant, collaborative kind of grant award, same ones involved with Innovate, we're not insisting at this stage that partners have a teaming agreement or an IP agreement or a Lambert model or any of those things. And the reason for that is we think this is early stage, and what we're funding here is discussions around setting up a partnership and identifying a project, program, or field of interest. That doesn't mean you shouldn't think about it. It just means that we don't require you at this stage to formalize those arrangements. But we think you should think about it and think about the expectations of the partners coming from their different perspectives and their different traditions, should this then move forward. On the other hand, I personally don't think, I think you should have those discussions, but I don't think you should obsess about them, because at early concept generation stage, any new IP that's likely to result is likely to be minimal, and you can waste an awful lot of time talking about it. However, it will become more important if partners are bringing IP into the partnership, whether that's in terms of technology IP or content IP or other kinds of assets. So please think about it. Please do tell us that you've thought about it, but we don't require you to evidence that at this stage you've got a formal partnership agreement.
Yeah, you should demonstrate to the panel that you've thought about it sufficiently for what you need to do around IP.
Cool. And on that note, somebody's asked whether AHRC or EPSRC claim any of the IP generated.
No.
No, I don't think so.
That was easy. We've got a couple of questions left, so if anybody else has got any more, now's the time to pop them in, because we're heading towards the end. So if the memory institution, somebody's asked, is working with the lottery fund already, but would like to develop their project in correlation with this grant, is that a problem?
As long as we're not funding something that's already been funded, that's fine. Again, it would be one of those ones where it'd be useful to the panel and to us to clarify what's already covered by lottery funding, what you're proposing to do with that's new, and how will this new money you're bidding for deliver that new thing.
Yeah, and I think Tom's exactly right on that. I mean, for me, I think that there's a potential side to that that's quite exciting. I think that if one can think about an extension into this area that's mobilised on the back of a large-scale HLF type bid, I think that will be really, really exciting. I can think of a couple of examples that I've come across in the past where adding an immersive experiences research layer on top of something that's big and doing all the heavy lifting in terms of objects or landscape or things like that could be very exciting. But as Tom says, you absolutely have to describe what this would be doing that would be new, as opposed to to what the lottery's already funded.
Great. And we've got one last question from Mayhab, who's asking, is it possible that the showcase could take place where the research is focused if it's a place-based theme proposal?
Okay, that is a really interesting question, and one that actually somebody has asked before, and we've had a little time to reflect on. So I think the showcase is going to try and draw people together. So if you were working on if your whole concept is about an experience premised on a remote on a specific location, I think you just got to think how you're going to capture that. So we'll be as accommodating as we can. If you want to live stream something from Morocco, we'll try and do it, or live stream something from Stonehenge, or you might want to go and record something on that location that gives the people who are attending physically the showcase the impression that you want to convey. So we'll be as accommodating as we can, and we'll try and make some level of technology platform work to enable us to do that.
Grand. Oh, people are getting their questions in under the wire very quickly. Can the educational aspects of this funding call be seminars, or does it really have to be about idea generation and network building?
So,
sorry.
No, so I think Andy was pretty clear about what the objective of the call is. The objective of the call is to build and develop a partnership that will go beyond the funding amount, to commit to coming to the showcase, to develop a prototype, visualization, illustration, whatever you want to call it, and to move the research base forward a little bit. I think if you think that within delivering on those objectives that seminars are the right things to do, then cost them in. It's up to you. We haven't got a requirement that they are. If you think they are critical to deliver what you want to do, then you should do so. But I guess by doing that, you're not doing other things with that money. So it's a bit of a vague, up to you answer. But the call is very much, you need to put in what you think is right to deliver on this proposition.
Cool, thank you. So this is probably a yes or no response. Somebody's asking, if they're not successful for this funding, will it be more difficult to apply for future funding rounds?
So I think the only rule we have there is that future funding rounds don't require you to have been successful in this.
Marvelous.
So any future funding rounds will have a direct route in. They're not only through available to people who've been successful in this project, in this program.
So we've got two final questions, and then I know, Andrew, you wanted to mention the Creative Clusters program, and somebody's asked about that too. So the last couple of questions we've got are around the showcase. Does the budget for that need to be built into the project, and will there be a time and a space for tech demos?
That's yes to both from my point of view, definitely. Tom, do you think the same?
No, I agree.
Very efficient. Very good. Well, we've managed to crank through 48 questions, which is pretty good going. So I think if there's any more, then please do get in touch. Tom's email address is on the slide decks, which we'll share. Also, you can email comms@ceprogram.com, and I'll make sure that any other questions flow to the relevant person. But unless there's any others, I think maybe we should move on to wrapping up and Andrew talking about the Creative Clusters program.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm just trying to share my screen just for a few last slides. So that's me, right? So that's there's Tom's details, which Sam has just mentioned, and which will be available on the slides. So yeah, I just wanted to close by saying I mentioned before that we've been very interested in strategy terms, in terms of the research that's come out, particularly led by Nesta and Hassan and Hassan Bakshi and Juan Mascarsa, that this idea that the creative industries thrive by clustering together in particular geographies. And perhaps this is best illustrated by this report that Nesta and Creative England did last year on the geography of creativity in the UK. So that but TechNation has also done the same kind of thing for the technology businesses, and the tech sector, however defined, is somewhat adjacent to our sector, somewhat overlapping with the creative industries, sometimes all wrapped up together. And the most recent stuff from Nesta has identified a whole series of clusters. So in the industrial strategy and the development of that, the Creative Industries Council have identified that support for clusters is going to be one of the key expectations they have out of what's called the Creative Industries Sector Deal, or it's currently called that. It hasn't been agreed yet. There is obviously a research component to these clusters, and yesterday, the first public announcement is that the AHRC is going to lead a program called the Creative Industries Cluster Program, which is going to invest somewhere between 40 and 80 million pounds. So quite a sizable investment, and the difference between those numbers is it being public funding, how you count it. but a significant investment in supporting research and development partnerships at the heart of a number of these clusters. So this is on now. There is a pre-call announcement on the Arts and Humanities Research Council website. Under this, this is the front page of the announcement, and you'll find it here, which is essentially a pre-call announcement. Is essentially a warning of a call that will come out in September of inviting bids to establish these research and development partnerships at the heart of creative clusters. So the anticipation is that the programme will fund 8 research and development partnerships. If you think of them as kind of multidisciplinary labs at the heart of creative clusters, which address challenges of those particular clusters, so the businesses and cultural organisations within them, then I think that wouldn't be too far off the beam. But it's so there's preliminary announcement there. It will fund 8 of these. The ambition is to have these established by and up and running from a year in September. So though I started the presentation today by saying that the industrial strategy hadn't to date shown a great support for the creative industries alongside automotive and healthcare and manufacturing and engineering, as of yesterday, that isn't quite the case. So this is the first kind of big strategic piece of the architecture which shows the government's industrial strategy applying to the creative industries. So we're using every opportunity. There'll be people on this webinar who will have an interest in this from the university's point of view. Please do go and read now. We've got some actual information to distribute. Have a look at it, cascade it through your networks, and start talking about it over the summer. We'll have full call documentation out in September, and the 3 of us will be, along with colleagues, on a road trip in October doing events around the country to take questions and help people in developing their bids. So thanks for the opportunity to introduce that. And as Sam said, there's various ways of getting back in contact with us about the immersive call and filtering things through. And thanks very much. And we look forward to some fantastic proposals landing with us in late September, early October. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.